Welcome to another edition of Business Today, where we take an in-depth look at the business world and its dealings. As always, we have an action-packed show for you today, and we're actually going to be starting things off as per usual with the personality segment and be continuing on to the market discussion segments. But at first, it is time for the personality segment. Now, today, we're actually looking into a very interesting section of the government. It is at the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery and corruption. Now we'll take a look at the Director General of that commission. Let's take a look.
President's Counsel Sarath Jayamanne is the Director General of the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption. He was an Additional Solicitor General at the Attorney General's Department of Sri Lanka and the Justice of the Court of Appeal in the Republic of Fiji. He obtained a bachelor's degree in Applied Sciences from University of Sri Jayawardenepura, a diploma in Forensic Medicine and Science from University of Colombo, and took oath as an attorney at law from Sri Lankan Law College. Sarath Jayamanne was awarded Britain's prestigious Chevening Scholarship and received his master's from the University of Oxford. He was awarded with the prestigious Hubert M. Humphrey Fellowship by the Fulbright Commission.
So we are talking with Mr. Sarath Jayamanne, the Director General of CIABOC. Now that's the name that you call it. Also, it's called the Bribery and Corruption Commission. So first off, can you talk about the history and the role of the commission itself?
Yes. If you look at our criminal justice system, we follow the British model. When they left Sri Lanka in 1948, the main criminal law was the penal code. Of course, the penal code had certain sections with regard to bribery. But in 1954, what happened? Then the legislator thought they must bring a special law for bribery. So then the Bribery Act was introduced in the year 1954. From 1954 up until 1994, there was a Bribery Commissioner's Department. And the head of the Bribery Commissioner's Department was Bribery Commissioner. And they used to do only the investigations. Once the investigations were done, they would refer the matter to the Attorney General's Department for the consideration of the cases or indictment, or thereafter to conduct the prosecution. In 1994, there was a change of the government. And during the election campaign, they gave a promise. Once they come to power, they would come out with a new strategy. So as promised, within 2 months after the new government came into power, they converted the Bribery Commissioner's Department into a commission. And in addition to that, there were certain policy changes. Number one, up to that point, the decision to prosecution was taken by the Attorney General's Department. Up to that point, even the prosecutions were done by the Attorney General's Department. With the setting up of the independent commission, even to take a decision, it was entirely with the commission. Thereafter, prosecution was entrusted to the commission. For that purpose, they had to recruit new legal officers. Since 1994, up to now, the commission has a number of mandates. Number one, they conduct the investigations, they take the decisions, and they do the prosecutions. In addition to that, we are a party to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Under that convention, which came into operation in the year 2004, there are certain obligations. And as part of those obligations, in addition to the role of law enforcement, we have to consider the prevention as well. Not only the prevention, we have to consider the awareness, change in the attitude of the people also. In addition to that, we are always answerable to the United Nations. So likewise, because of those multifaceted tasks, the Bribery Commission, the CIABOC, is tasked with so many challenges. It is not an agency merely conducting investigation and forwarding the material to the Attorney General. It is a multifaceted, and they are by law, out of 3 commissioners, 2 have to be former judges of the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. And the third person is a person who has had a wealth of experience in the investigations. And what is the role of the Director General? It is the commissioners who is in charge of the commission. It is the commissioners who take the decision whether to prosecute or not. Once they decide to prosecute, they will give directions to the Director General. And the Director General is appointed by His Excellency the President with the consent of the commissioners. Of course, the commissioners are appointed by the President with the concurrence of the Constitutional Council. So therefore, this is an independent body. The role of the Director General is to send out indictment. And in this country, with regard to criminal matter, there are only two persons who can send out indictment. That is the Attorney General and the Director General of the Bribery Commission. But the mandate of the Bribery Commissioner, Director General, is somewhat limited. We have mandate only with regard to three offences. One is bribery, second one is corruption, the third one is accumulation of wealth. Loosely we say is asset case. So with regard to those cases, I have the power to send out indictment, but of course on the direction of the commissioners. With regard to all other criminal matters, those matters are investigated by the police. They will forward the material to the Attorney General. Then the Attorney General has the power to send out indictment and thereafter prosecute.
Yeah.
And this is the basic structure in our criminal justice system.
So how long have you been with the Commission, and what has your experience been on the day-to-day matters?
Actually, I joined the Attorney General's Department after 3 months after I passed out from the law college. I was there from 1989 until the year 2016 November. So when I left, I was seconded. Still I am a member of the Attorney General's Department. When I was seconded here, I was an Additional Solicitor General. I was seconded here on the 24th of November 2016. For nearly last 2 years, I have been here. So when I came here, I just want to find out if there were any failures in the Bribery Commission, to find out the reasons for that. Then there were certain salient features that came for my examination. Number one was that we never had experienced investigators. We had to depend on police officers, and they are really good when it comes to the bribery cases. You may have heard a few months back, we have made a raid since 1948. This is the biggest raid that we have made, and that was done by our police officers. They are very good in raid cases. But when it comes to corruption and asset cases, those are based on knowledge of accountancy. You need to have professionals. You need to have sought after investigators. Why? All these criminals, they have the support of professionals. So if you want to eradicate bribery and corruption in this country, we have to have more professionally qualified forensic investigators. Not only that, we need to have good prosecutors as well. For example, world over, only in 3 commissions, to my knowledge, they conduct prosecutions. One country is Indonesia, another country is Fiji. And their prosecutors in the anti-corruption commissions, they are paid very much higher than the prosecutors in the Attorney General's Department. Why? If you want to prosecute these serious corruption cases, you need to have sought after prosecutors. So you pay these prosecutors at a high fee and then recruit. Even in Fiji, sometimes the officers of the Attorney General's Department, they leave the Attorney General's Department and join the Fiji Anti-Corruption Commission. So that is how, if you want to have a really anti-corruption commission, the really efficient one, you have to have very good prosecutors. Not only the investigators, but you need the prosecutors as well. So that is why when I came here, I found this. So then at least to recruit accountants, auditors, engineers, we have created cadres for 200 vacancies. Now we have received applications. Actually, those applications were directly channeled to the Commission of Examinations. At the end of next month, he will have aptitude test. For 200 vacancies, my knowledge is we have received more than 8,000 applications.
So pretty qualified people might be chosen.
Yes. Actually, they will be recruited at somewhat a junior level. In addition to that, our plan is to have few top class experts, and for that on contract basis. Again, we depend on the budgetary allocations made by the Treasury, and we have to always ask for these things, and these are some of the challenges, but I'm sure, pretty confident that we will be able to make a big change in the next year.
So you talked about a little bit about the definition of corruption.
Yes.
What is the definition of bribery itself?
I will start with the bribery.
Yeah.
Bribery means that if you are a public servant, all the public servants are culpable for bribery in this country. That is very unfortunate. Even a country like Singapore, Malaysia and Hong Kong, even the employees of the private sector, they are guilty for bribery. But we are going to amend our laws very soon, and we will see to it that private sector also included in the bribery offense. Bribery means if you are a public servant, if you accept any kind of a gratification to do the work or to refrain from doing any work, that is basically bribery. What is gratification? Gratification means maybe money or any other kind of material thing, or any kind of even a holiday, weekend, foreign tour, any kind of a lease, or even a sexual pleasure, that would amount to a bribery. What is corruption? This bribery offense was there from 1954. Then around 1990s, they realized some of the public servants, very few, they are the ones who are involved in bribery. Most of the public servants are very innocent, their integrity is very high, but some of the public officers, they are very shrewd. They don't want to be seen. So therefore, it's very difficult to catch them while accepting bribe. So then they evolve another method. What is that method? They look at his wealth, assets. So then that is called asset case. Conducting asset case is a huge challenge. Why? It takes time. You know his non-income and you know his expenditure, and if there's a difference, law presumes that you have acquired this difference through bribery. In order to succeed an asset case, minimum it would take 2 years for investigations. Why? There are several steps that you need to follow. That is called asset. In 1994, they found you can't catch them for bribery, and you don't see the assets as well, but you can see, being a public servant, he was involved in certain decisions to the detrimental to the government, and he knew definitely there will be a great loss to the government, or some third party may have got undue advantage, undue benefit. And if you are involved in that decision making process, knowingly to cause such damage to the government or advantage to a third party or to himself, that is called corruption. These corruption cases, unfortunately, are reported with the change of the government. During the pendency of the government, there are hardly any complaints. After the change of the government, what will happen? When you receive complaints, you have to go and look for the evidence. This evidence is there in documents, and sometimes it's very difficult to trace the documents. Sometimes the witnesses, they won't cooperate. They won't come forward and give evidence against their former masters, whatever the government is. So these are some of the challenges. In addition to that, in other countries, that they do everything electronically. So once you do your transaction electronically, it is very difficult to erase. So when you depend on hard copy the documents, that is where the challenge is. Merely catching a suspect won't do. We have to have admissible material. Why? According to our law, every person is presumed to be innocent. We can't just arrest people. If we arbitrarily arrest a person, even our decisions can be challenged by way of a fundamental rights jurisdiction or by way of a writ jurisdiction by the Supreme Court. So whatever we have to do we have to comply with the provisions of law. And once we have material, and if we arrest, that does not mean that he will be convicted. Why? We have to prove the case in a court of law beyond reasonable doubt through these witnesses. If these witnesses don't give evidence perfectly, what will happen? Again, the case will collapse.
So that's the procedure you follow after allegation is received?
That's the procedure. Here in the commission, it is the commissioners who will take a decision whether to investigate or not. First, they will do a preliminary investigation. After the preliminary investigation, if they find some material, then they give directions to conduct full investigation. After the conduct of the full investigation, there are different layers. The investigation unit will send the material to the Director General. He will call for a report from the legal division. Then along with that report, you will refer to the commissioners. Then they take the decision. Likewise, there are different layers to see that these things are happening in a transparent manner.
All right. So talking about the allegations itself, what is the procedure that someone should follow, a government employee should follow in a case to report the allegation of corruption or bribery?
Actually, if you look at our website,
yeah.
we launched our website 17th of December last year. It is only still only 10 months old.
What is the website?
CIABOC.gov.lk.
Okay.
And there was a competition few months back, and among government sites, we have one of the best 5 websites. So if you go to our websites, there are different methods it has given. So basically, our hotline is 1954. We are 24 hours awake. If someone asks for a bribe, and if we are going to give the bribe, right? So then we will come and join with you. So if someone asks bribe, don't give the bribe. If you have given a part of the bribe, don't give the balance, complain to us. Then we will arrange a raid. Because in a court of law, judges would always look not only the evidence of the complainant, they want to know whether the evidence of the complainant is corroborated by an outside also. So therefore, once the complainant makes a complaint to us, our officers will make discreet inquiries and arrange a raid. So therefore, we have 2 witnesses at least. The complainant is there and our officer is there, and therefore it is much easier to prove such a case.
So talking about cases of bribery, now bribery is somewhat ingrained in our social culture. So what are the steps that you guys are taking to distance ourselves from that?
Actually, it is a huge challenge. We have visited and we have developed collaborations with countries whose situation was much worse than Sri Lanka. They were also under the British rule. For example, countries like Malaysia, Hong Kong and Singapore. Even the Prime Minister of Singapore, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, he visited first in the year 1950. Thereafter several times he had come. He had a dream. He wanted to see one day Singapore, how Singapore can become Sri Lanka, Colombo. Because Colombo was a role model then, you see. Since then what has happened? It is very unfortunate to understand what has gone through. Now, main thing is when it comes to the causes, we have to find out the causes for the bribery. For example, I think we have to make a attitudinal change. If you go to the European countries, they don't have bribery commissions. They don't have anti-corruption commissions. And when you ask that question from those members in those countries, they say, we don't want any commissions. Why? Those values are ingrained in our DNA. But in countries, those who are under the British rule, I am not able to explain the reason. We have to be told by someone, some agency, bribery is wrong. So that is why we have to change this attitude from their younger days, from their school days. So that is why we are going to have a big campaign next year to change the attitude of the people from a younger days. I think the medium like art, the aesthetic medium should be used to change the thinking pattern of the people. And the children should be told from their younger days that you have to realize the values of this anti-corruption. So that is the best way, because when you grow in the public service, and it is very difficult to change your attitude. On the other hand, you go to a public office, you look for a contact person. Why you look for a contact person? You feel you can't get any work done without having the support of a contact person. If you are unable to find a contact person, what will happen naturally? You will look for a person to pay a bribe and get the work done. Even giving a bribe is an offense. Even taking a bribe is also offense. So therefore, we have to find out the causes for the bribe. There are government agencies, we say high risk government agencies. Why? They are vulnerable for bribery and corruption. When a public servant is given a wide amount of discretion, that is, if it is not properly monitored, what will happen? If there are loose circulars, if the circulars are not clear, if those are chaotic, and that is the ground you breed the corruption. So that is why it is up to the head of the government department to find out the causes and plug those loopholes. In fact, we have prepared a particular paper, probably within next few days. It will go before the cabinet, and we have suggested His Excellency would take this paper before the cabinet, I suppose. We have suggested that each and every government department must do some research and find out the causes for the bribery and corruption in his or her department, and find out those causes and come out with a solution. And especially in other countries, when you go to the reception area, you can see a citizen charter that will give the services that is provided, the documents general public will have to bring, and the official fees that are being charged, and within how many days the services would be given, and if your service is not done, the person to whom you can complain. Likewise, all the procedures are laid down. In addition to that, there is an integrity officer, each government department. His role is to see how the system is working. If the system is not working, with the help of the head of the department and with the help of the prevention unit in the particular department, they will try to rectify. In addition to that, the Bribery Commission also would have a prevention unit. This prevention unit will closely work with the integrity officers in each and every government department. They will always advise the integrity officer how to rectify the existing system. The prevention unit in the anti-corruption system, they don't work as investigators, but they are helping government and private sector to improve the system. I think we have to improve the system.
Now, talking about you coming into the Bribery Commission itself, was this one of the biggest holes that you noticed in government sectors, and were there any other faults that you noticed that have to be rectified in the future?
I think actually last year, the Cabinet of Ministers realized that in order to respond to the bribery and corruption in this country, we need to have a strategy plan, anti-corruption plan for the next 5 years. And that is one of the requirements under the UNCAC also. That is the requirement under the GSP Plus, the facility also. So therefore, we have to have a plan. So therefore, government cabinet ministers gave us the mandate to prepare a national action plan. In order to prepare the national action plan, we went across the country. We had more than 30 consultations. And even tomorrow, we are going to have a consultation. There will be about 75 public servants are coming to Colombo. So we are getting their ideas with regard to various issues. And for each and every consultation, there were more than 100 public servants, 25 from the civil society and private sector. And they were divided into 10 groups. Each group was given on a particular topic, maybe procurement, maybe paying taxes, maybe education, maybe private sector. Likewise, there were those topics were divided. And they deliberated for nearly 1.5 hours. Once after that period, the leader of that group come before the main plenary and make his ideas known. And we have collected that material. And once we finalize tomorrow our action plan, we are going to launch on the 9th of December. That is the Anti-Corruption Day. So we are going to launch. So and members of the public sector, private sector, they would know exact our next journey, our strategy in eradicating bribery and corruption in this country.
All right, that was very insightful, Mr. Sarath Jayamanne. That was a very informative segment as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for giving me the very valuable opportunity so that people in this country would know what we are doing in the CIABOC. Thank you so much for giving this valuable opportunity, and go for our website and see, you will see the type of work that we are doing at the moment.
That is ciaboc.gov.lk.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure to have you here. Please join us again if you have something more to add on. And with that, we are winding up the personality segment of our show. We will be moving on to the market discussion segment, and Nisanga will be here to take you through that. For now, let's take a break.
Welcome back, and you are with Business Today, and we will move on to our next discussion, and it's on quite a timely topic, and we've been hearing a lot about information security concerns these days, especially in relation to social media. So we thought we will revolve our conversation around information security today, and we got Asela Vaidya Lankara. He's a cyber security specialist joining us. A very good evening to you.
Good evening, Sandra.
Right. First of all, what are the latest developments in the world of information security?
Well, there's been some significant incidents in the past few weeks or months, I would say. British Airways suffered exposure of their credit card information. Detroit Airport had one of the cybersecurity incidents. But I think what's most important and caught everyone's attention and caught everyone by surprise is Facebook.
The Facebook incident.
So basically, Facebook suffered a massive data breach, first of its kind for Facebook. And that had a lot of ramifications, because given the current situation Facebook is facing at the moment, it was come as a very bad time for them for that.
Right. So we've heard that about 50 million accounts were hacked. So what is the current situation? Has it gone beyond that mark? And what is the current situation of this cyber attack, and how severe is this attack?
That's an excellent question. So essentially, they started with 50 million accounts. So what they did was, as part of their routine checks, they noticed that there was a unnatural spike in the user logins. Basically, they realized that there was a feature on Facebook. If you're very savvy with Facebook, you would know there's a feature called View As. So there was an exploit related to this View As feature, where what we say is an API. I don't want to get into too much technical jargon, but there was a vulnerability in that View As feature, and that caused the data breach that we were talking about. Initially, they monitored 50 million accounts. Now they've identified 40 million more accounts. So now
40 million more accounts.
So now it's
90 million.
Now it's up to 90 million, which is about less than 10% of that worldwide, because there are about 2 billion users worldwide. So roughly about 10% or less of that entire.
For the moment.
For the moment.
It can be more.
It could be more, because they're investigating. Currently what they've done is they've informed the FBI and the FCC. Those are the US watchdogs that they have to inform of such an incident. They are still, as of today, they are still investigating. And usually this type of breach, Nisanga, they are not really sure themselves how much records have been vulnerable. So as a precautionary measure, what they've done is they have, as of Friday, they have put 50 million people, they asked them to log back into Facebook, basically terminated all their login sessions, and asked them to log back in and asked them to change their password. The additional 40 million which they discovered at the beginning of this week, again they were logged out, and they have been asked to put their new credentials in. So that's where it stands at the moment.
Right, so this is quite a dangerous situation. So
Absolutely.
How was this cyber attack discovered?
It was discovered as a part of the routine check that they usually do. They noticed sudden usage of this particular feature, which was not, it was underutilized actually. So that was a cause of concern for them. Interestingly enough, I don't know if this was a cause of concern or interest, but Mark Zuckerberg's own profile itself was part of these 50 million profiles, and also the COO of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, her profile also was part of it. So it says a lot about Facebook. It says a lot about how they need to maybe focus more on the information security and their data privacy and their cyber security at this moment of time.
Right, so we've discussed the severity of this attack. So what is the impact on the Facebook itself as a company?
That's a very interesting question, because
it
this
should be huge.
It's huge because this comes at a very bad moment on Facebook. They're just coming out of the Cambridge Analytica scandal. They are still handling repercussions of the Cambridge Analytica.
And we've been hearing similar incidents
exactly. So
quite often.
Only thing is
during the last couple of months.
Absolutely, and Facebook has been severely criticized for fake news, its use and its role in the 2016 US presidential elections. It has been severely criticized for this Cambridge Analytica scandal, where that was not a data breach, but that was where unwillingly people's information was used in ways that they thought that was used in a proper way, but it was used in third parties in a not so proper way and abused. And this is the concern, where they were just coming out of that. You remember there were congressional hearings, not only in the US, they went to European Union, they went to several Asian locations, and they had to explain themselves why they were doing and how this data is safe. Now, just as they are coming out of this
came up.
This situation arises where they actually suffered a data breach, where somebody has initiated an attack. And interestingly enough,
which has a more severe impact.
The impact and the severity, because up to this moment, they could always say that the data was only mismanaged.
Right.
But we are now looking at a situation where in fact the data was breached and extracted. And they themselves are not aware of what the footprint is, how much of data was used, and how much was the damage. Because let's not forget, when we say that the data is being exposed, on people's Facebook profiles, what we call personal identifiable profiles. Personal identifiable information is there. For example, your phone number, your mother's maiden name, your possibly maybe your credit card information or bank information. These are information that you can use for to clone you in cyberspace, or to steal your data, or to basically maybe security questions on your credit card. So this is information that cyber criminals may use to steal your identity online, to make transactions on your behalf, or to do more damage to yourself in your online presence. So this is the problem that Facebook is having. Also, Facebook has this moment onwards gone as a trusted person of keeping the data.
Definitely.
And you can use the I'm sure you would have used it as well. Facebook uses its logins to log into third-party sites or applications. Now with this breach, they are themselves not sure if those third-party applications also are at risk. So you see the impact is not only with regard to Facebook, now it has gone over to third-party applications which are heavily reliant on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Pandora. There are enough and more applications that piggyback on Facebook's login features that they themselves have to now look internally and to see if they have suffered an attack or not.
Right, so after hearing this incident, a lot of people panicked, and there were messages going around requesting to change your passwords initiated by the general public, by the Facebook users. But how do you actually know if your account has been hacked?
It's very simple. If your account has been hacked, you would notice a message from Facebook and you will be immediately logged out of Facebook. Right. That's indication number one that you are part of this 50 million, or rather almost 100 million users now that have suffered this data breach or data attack. Anyway, as a practice, I would encourage the general public, because Sri Lanka, again, 96% of Sri Lankans who use social media are on Facebook. Right. So Sri Lanka is a country that primarily uses Facebook as social media. So I would urge anyone who's watching, please take a moment to maybe set your password or reset your password rather, and maybe change some of your security settings.
Right, but how do you know if your data has been already stolen or recorded elsewhere?
At the moment, it's very difficult to say, but as researchers, we have observed that some records have ended up in the hands of cyber criminals. They're on sale even now in the dark web.
Okay.
So you have profiles like this going for maybe $10 to $50 per profile. So that's how, based on the amount of data and the information that you have. But also, as a precaution, like I mentioned, it's always good. We say that data privacy or data security and password policy is like a diaper.
Right.
You must change it often.
Okay.
You must not leave it on the table, and you must never share it with anyone. So what I would urge the general public also is to diligently anyway, every month or 2 months interval, change your password as a policy, as a practice anyway, because when you look at this, the day and age that we live in, this type of good practices will actually keep you safer when it comes to these type of organizations and these type of social media outlets.
Right. Actually, mostly people do not share their passwords, but they do not change them periodically.
A bit
That's
of both.
the problem.
A bit of both, actually.
Okay.
What we've noticed is sometimes younger demographics, 13 to maybe 19 to perhaps up to about 25, they tend to share their password amongst themselves and friends. As you go on, it's more of laziness, where you have the same password across several platforms, or it's the same password that you have not changed for a long time. So this is a danger sign that anyway, regardless of Facebook or not, that you must not do, and you must change your password frequently.
Right, so any other implications of this?
Right now, if Facebook is having a lot of implications, it has to answer now to the FBI. The FBI has initiated an investigation separately. Because Nisanga, although the timing is very interesting when it comes to Facebook and this data breach, because we've noticed all this time, Facebook has been asked to make sure the integrity of their information is secure. They were concentrating on fake news, they were concentrating on people spreading fake news, they were concentrated on trolls and bots, where various people were propagating false news.
Right.
So they put a lot of resources to make sure that the fake news doesn't come out. Then they had a separate problem. Countries like Sri Lanka and Myanmar, there was a lot of hate speech on Facebook, which was in their natural languages. So suddenly they had an issue of hate speech and racial speech, racial slurs, and all of that in natural languages, in native languages that were appearing on Facebook. So then they focused their resources on that. So they were focusing on the truthfulness of the information. They were focusing on making it a safe space. Then cyberbullying was a problem for Facebook. They focused on that. But the question we're asking now is, did they forget the fundamental and not focus on their cybersecurity, which was the case. Facebook has issued a statement yesterday saying they have recruited 20,000 people, and hopefully that's enough. Let's hope so. They have to answer to the European Union, just to close up. They have to answer to the European Union. They're looking at about ₹1 billion of fines. So Facebook has a very tough road ahead of them, and I hope that they can take better care of users and their information.
We certainly hope, and thank you so much for being with us today. It was quite an informative conversation today. Thank you once again, Asela, for sharing your valuable insights.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Right, with that, we will wind up our show for tonight. Thank you very much for being with us. Until we see you next week, take care and good night.